So we're continuing our exploration of Tonglen, that wonderful practice. And relative to that, we've been having series of examples drawn from the Uttara Tantra about Buddha nature as a support for practicing Tonglen. So just a reminder, Tonglen means sending and taking, and I'll go over that meditation. And we're working with 9 examples, and this week we're working with the 2 final examples of Buddha nature. So we've worked with the statue in the lotus, the bees surrounding the honey, the 2 different kinds of treasure being buried underground, being dropped and lost in compost or filth, the gold statue that's hidden in tattered rags. And there might have been a couple more. Oh yeah, the mango, the fruit seed that was going to burst into the shoots. The next example is interesting, and don't reject it. It's sort of a little problematic, but if we think about it, we can work with it. So you'll see what I mean. The example is a miserable looking, destitute, poor woman who is pregnant with a universal monarch. So I think as soon as we hear about a miserable and ugly, poor, destitute woman living in the poor houses, hostels, and crossroads. So essentially, the point of this example is who is the most powerless in a culture and who lives a life that they experience the most contempt and scorn and difficulty. And so on the one hand, I find it problematic to say an ugly, poor woman. On the other hand, actually, it's a great example for our culture because we know the most powerful in our culture are the rich and beautiful. So we can't pretend beauty isn't a significant privilege in our culture. So here we have this destitute, scorned, and the point they're trying to make that they have no refuge. There's no warm house. There's no one who's going to help this person. And the whole time she is pregnant with a king. So she is miserable, not knowing that her circumstances are about to be changed the minute the king is born. Then she has a protector and refuge and will have, all the wealth and privilege. Similarly, if we look at that relative to Buddha nature, the poorhouse and the hostels and the crossroads are examples of samsara. We're in birth after birth in all of these different circumstances. We feel as though at times the pain of samsara is too great and we're miserable, and we're not cognizant that there is this immanence of our Buddha nature in the process of becoming. It is growing, and at some point will be born. So there's a inevitability of the Buddha nature reaching fruition. And this example is said to correspond to the later stages of a bodhisattva's realization, because at this stage, the Buddha nature is nurtured in the womb, and it is developing with that inevitable birth ready to come. And the 9th and final example is a statue in a clay mold. And so there's an example where you simply have to remove the clay. In the old days, the molds were made out of clay, and there's a statue made of precious materials, made of gold. And there may be traces of the clay mold left on the statue and you just have to brush them away. And so that would be the final stages of the Bodhisattva's path, where there's the ease of just brushing away the last imprints of any residual ignorance. And so all of these examples are meant to give us confidence in Buddha nature, as well as a sense of the Buddha nature's presence with all of its qualities, that it is changeless, and that it is a inevitable treasure and consequence of our Buddhist practice. And so when we talk about it being a statue made out of precious materials or gold, that's the changeless nature. It can be covered in any material and still be perfect. It never loses its value. And it has a profound and fathomless depth of the Dharma. And there are also smaller qualities that it's referring to, or a number of different aspects of Buddha nature. So for instance, when we talk about the honey protected by the bees, there are lots of different kinds of honey, but they all have that sweetness. So it's the one taste of the Buddha nature, Buddha essence. It's the same in every sentient being. Or the grain and the husks. They're vast numbers of sentient beings. They all have Buddha nature. There are vast numbers of teachings, and there are vast mentalities. So the husk is like all the different kinds of minds. When you remove the husk of the confusion, there is still the perfection of the Buddha nature. And in the sense of the baby in the womb, the baby that's the king, a sense of the innateness, or the statue in the mold, the innateness, that it's, its full presence is there. And so when we talk about Buddha nature, they say it's a remedy for 5 kinds of mistakes. The first mistake is faint-heartedness. So Buddha nature gives us confidence. If we think studying the Dharma and the Dharma path is too hard, we'll never make it, it gives us courage, because we can have confidence in the innateness of our Buddha nature and the imminence of our Buddha nature developing. It also is a correction for the mistake of having contempt for others, that Buddha nature quality that is in us is exactly the same and present in any other mind, every other mind. So there's no way to have contempt for any other being with mind. It's also a remedy for self-cherishing. If we start to develop pride, start to feel that we're more special, more learned, more whatever, more, then we remember that there's the equality of the Buddha nature in each and every being. And then it's a correction for either misunderstanding the teachings or being confused about the teachings. So if we were to think that emptiness means a voidness, the teachings of Buddha nature help us understand that emptiness means empty of everything that is not Buddha nature, and full and replete with the qualities of the full manifestation of the Buddha nature. So it's a correction for any kind of nihilism, veering into that fear or that quality when we talk about the Dharmakaya, or the vast realization and the meaning of emptiness It's empty of confusion, empty of dualism, empty of everything that is not this vast Buddha nature. So this morning, as we finish the 9 examples of Buddha nature, I just wanted to refer back to the Shantideva teachings that we were talking about all last year, particularly relative to the mistakes of fearing that we can't achieve a full understanding of our altruistic heart, of our, that it's too hard, we'll never be able to do it, this, this bodhisattva path, remembering that we do have an innate Buddha nature. The quality of contempt for others when we think of the difficult people in our lives or get caught up in the ills of, it seems like, limitless ignorance in our culture, in our countries, in the ongoing human condition, the contempt for others that can arise, as well as the quality of preferencing our suffering as the most important suffering to take care of first. So I want to go back to those verses that we really spent quite a long time on, just to look at them again from the perspective of the Tonglen practice that we're doing and the Buddha nature teachings of this perfection, this original blessing that is the same in each and every being with mind, and that we all have, and that we can have confidence in. So I'd like to read a couple of verses and just sit with each verse for a few minutes, and then we'll go into the Tonglen meditation. So this is from Shantideva's chapter on meditation, and it's verse 94, and they're all not exactly in sequence, but close to each other. And therefore, I'll dispel the pain of others, for it is simply pain just like my own. And others I will aid and benefit, for they are living beings just like me. Since I and other beings both in wanting happiness are equal and alike, what difference is there to distinguish us that I should strive to have my own bliss alone? Since I and other beings both in fleeing suffering are equal and alike, what difference is there to distinguish us that I should save myself and not the other? Hands and other limbs are thought of as members of a body. Shall we not consider others likewise limbs and members of a living whole? Those desiring speedily to be a refuge for themselves and other beings should interchange the terms of I and other, and thus embrace a sacred mystery. The significance of the Tonglen meditation that we've been working with is one that is so primary in understanding in practice how to accomplish those verses that we've been talking about, exchanging the I and other in a step-by-step way, really learning how to change the I to we by just experimenting with how much you can take in on a given day of sharing the we mentality, starting first with someone close and dear to your heart, and then expanding it to the whole living body of the world with, in your own way, the potential to make it so expansive that it encompasses the whole world. So it's one of the most significant training exercises. They're all significant, but for really looking at that mystery of where our border is and where we think we become faint-hearted, as they say, or reach the boundary of contempt for others, or see right in the moment how important it is to protect ourselves first, that quality of mind, and how we can wear that quality of mind away like water on a stone, just ever so gradually, by repeating this meditation over and over and over again until we relax into a heart of we. So let's go through the stages. I'll mention each of the stages and then we'll take a couple of minutes with each one. So first we drop into just the mind at rest, dropping thoughts, whatever meditation experience you might have of just resting in this present moment and just being open to this moment as it is on your cushion in a, let's say, a protected situation so that you can just look at your own mind. So we're not doing this in the middle of a crowd where we have to pay attention to personal safety. We're saying, okay, I'm going to just take this moment where I can directly look at my mind and drop all the thoughts, drop all the fears, and just be open. Then we take it, we begin the Tonglen, which is breathing in something that is difficult and exhaling that quality that we would normally want to protect and hold on to for ourselves. And we start with, if the air were dense, smoky, oily, malodorous, something that we would normally resist, breathing that in, exhaling fresh. I'm looking at our bright fall day, lovely fresh air. The third stage is working with a situation that's dear to your heart, someone that is close to you that's suffering, and you can give rise to that we quality, that absolute sameness of their happiness and your happiness, their health and your health, being equally important to you, so much so that your natural instinct is to take the suffering on, breathing it in and giving your health, your prosperity, your whatever resources that you have. It's a natural sharing of we-ness. And then the fourth stage is, can you make it a little bigger? Just in your imagination, can you make it a little bigger? One more person, one more animal, one more household. So in your own way, trusting in the innate goodness of your heart and knowing that what we're doing is we're getting rid of the obscurations to that brilliant goodness, one layer at a time. So starting first, just resting in an open-hearted mind stream, a quality of just fearlessness in your relationship with the world, in your imagination, on your cushion at home this morning. Creating a safe situation so you can drop your defenses and experience for yourself what that full, open-hearted presence is as a felt heart-mind experience. Letting compassion and loving kindness arise at home with the world in just this moment. What is that like as a felt experience? Now experience your breathing. Just breathing in and breathing out easily, wide open. And we can think of this as our home base, so that we can see when the resistance arises, when the shutting down arises, when that sort of slamming of the heart door starts to happen. And so we'll introduce challenges. So if the air around you became smoky or dense or oily and it didn't feel comfortable to breathe in, experiment with remaining open to that, breathing in and then breathing out and sharing with, at this moment, just your shared space, giving that fresh air, that nurturing air. Just the subtle challenge of breathing becoming a little difficult and relaxing and exhaling that fresh air that you find so easy. So easy that you don't even think about when you're breathing in fresh air, that you're giving that back out. Breathing in what is challenging, exhaling the ease of the good fresh air. Now making it a little more difficult by just imagining like a little movie in an illusory way, someone dear to your heart who might be in difficult circumstances of any kind right now. And your instinctual reaction is to open and say whatever you need. So you're not challenging that instinct, you're going with it, breathing it in and exhaling to that person whatever they need, however you imagine it. So we're not so much concentrating on the narrative, but the felt sense. Someone you dearly love, and you say, I'll take that off your shoulders, and here it is. This is absolutely whatever I can give you, whatever helps right now, I'm giving it. So resting with that visualization. And letting it ride each and every breath. And you may see that although it's instinctual, it's still not easy. So we're looking at that resistance, and we're looking at the difficulty that might arise for us, and then breathing in for all of those right now who even in close situations can't imagine or have fear arising. I breathe in for all of us the fear that arises, and I exhale the courage or the softening or the opening. And then in whatever way we can, making it a little bigger. So let's sit in meditation for a few minutes, just looking at our experience of this sending and taking, this softening of our heart, this engaging with our imagination in the suffering of the world, and how clearly we can see our resistance and at the same time our possibly minute but steady growth. Let's rest with this for a few minutes. Okay, so now we have an opportunity for some discussion about what we're learning and observing. Yes, Eva.
I was trying to catch the 5 mistakes that you mentioned. You mentioned fearlessness or faint-heartedness and contempt and pride and misunderstanding or confusion. And I think that was one, but I missed the 5th one.
The confusion is actually 2 sides. One is believing in the inherent reality of phenomena as opposed to seeing their illusory or impermanent nature. And the other side of that is thinking that the emptiness, when we talk about emptiness, means a voidness as opposed to the replete with Buddha nature qualities.
Thanks.
Should we turn off the Facebook part?
Oh, thank you. For those folks who are new, we turn off the live part so that our discussion is private. So bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise, where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Okay. So when we're doing it for the situation that's near and dear, sometimes we're shocked by how quickly we resist that also. You know, that seems too hard. You know, we have this instinctual response. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. If I could take it on, I would. But then it's like, but what? Can I really take that on? So that's exactly what we want to see. In part, that's the faint-heartedness. And it's also, you know, essentially just where we are. That's the starting point. We have this great big heart with a great big intention of altruism, and it's our job to see, oh my goodness, even the slightest challenge to my own, you know, healthy state, whatever it is frightening. The suffering of the world is frightening, even when it's someone close to me. And it's hard to fully open in the same way that I can fear for my own health and well-being. And then we quiet and soften and start. So how did you experience, or how do you experience that, even the smallest challenge and finding your edge there?
When you were talking about taking up and you carrying it, I like doing that because it brought it down to very, very small, practical, real life situations for me. Like, so like in essence, oh, let me expand it to my neighbor, oh, he might need a hand with something, and or somebody may be asking for help, and my first intention is to say, oh no, I don't have time, or it's going to take away from me some way. And just constantly doing that practice of saying, yeah, how can I help? How can I help? Mentally help me to feel, some expansion within myself. And then I was doing it with a sickness that my partner has. And, I don't all the time practice what that really entails, and so that was useful just to gain some compassion and perspective around that. That's all.
Thanks, Melody, because we think we're so brave-hearted, it's true, and then then we see right in our face that it's hard. It's really hard to be open, even to the folks that are closest to us, to the extent that we want to protect ourselves or that we want to retain our own good health. The idea of fully taking on someone else's. And so it's a constant teaching to see where that edge is and how to soften in that moment of seeing that, as well as to have the compassion for ourselves and everyone else that we're in the same boat with. Were other people able to work with that this morning, or do you have a curiosity about that? How are you experiencing that, Eva?
Yeah, very much. I find I find some of those pop up in the guise of self-defense or protection, and it is I don't need to do that. Because it turns into contempt, and it turns into all these unnecessary constructs. And it's just because I have a habit, with good reason maybe, of being in certain moments, very, very subtle challenges. Like you were saying, what are the subtle challenges? They can be really subtle. And then the old fear comes up, and then the old defense comes up. And then to validate the defense, I make it contempt. And it's like the whole thing is a construct, and don't need it.
That was such a clear description. So let's say with anger, for instance, we've been discussing this for months and months and months, and pretty much I bet everybody can say, I can see all the different stages. If I start to get irritated, how I build it into a bigger and bigger anger. If I'm triggered by, something, I can see all the different stages. And this is more the self-defensiveness and self-protection, where the stages are a little more hidden, and that quality of softening, opening our hearts, seeing our own limitation, and then being so ashamed of that then we start another shutting down to seeing our own limitations. The shame starts, or the shame or guilt starts another whole series of reactions, and they're all related to our heart mind shutting down. And so that's why the four stages of the meditation are so important. First, touching base with, all right, this is openness. I can feel it, taste it, touch it. All right, this is the neutral one. I can see the subtle shift when something feels a little difficult, breathing in, breathing out, the difficult air. But when we then go to, like our partner, our best friend, our beloved, of course I could take on, oh my goodness, I can't take on, oh, I'm a horrible person, and all of those layered reactions start almost more quickly than we can see them. So we want to be able to stay open and compassionate and close to that home base so that we can keep returning to that openness and slow down that whole process so we can see it clearly. And then as we're engaging with the world, being more relaxed and closer to the openness, gravitating there instead of to the self-defensiveness, so that we can maintain the mentality of we as we engage with the world. Does that make sense to you? We're looking at another whole series of triggering reactions with lots and lots and lots of layers of subtlety, and training ourselves not to go into the self-hatred, but to switch gears. And man, I and all other beings who are afraid in this moment, may I breathe in for all of us and breathe courage back to all of us, instead of going into that habitual reaction. Jeff, you have a comment?
Yeah, let's see, let me lower my hand. First of all, Khenmo, what you were talking about with this was just so incredible. I won't even pick out which pieces. I actually really want to listen again to your talk at the beginning. And one of the things that came to me is just thinking about, like, getting away from I versus the other person. And there's a couple of things. I mean, just really thinking more like if I'm talking to a friend, instead of like talking about how I'm doing or talking, like asking, how are you doing, would be like talking about how are we doing, and just broadening it away from me versus them. I don't even know what that looks like. And then the other thing, and I'm really curious to your reaction to this, is I was just thinking like how, I do so many things in my life where it's like, oh, I really want to have a nice garden this year. I mean, this is like what I think all of us do. It's like, I want to have a nice garden. And like today, I'm going to go out for a bike ride. And it's that struggle of like, how much is self-cherishing? And like, what if like I said, well, instead of like, I want a nice garden, I spent my time with finding an elderly person in my community who doesn't have a garden. Said, well, I'm going to help them have a nice garden. And so I just started thinking about like sort of action Buddhism. And I'm just sort of curious, like if anybody even talks about that, and is that a thing? Could it be a thing?
Oh, I think that's engaged Buddhism. Linda, you have your hand up.
Kind of a perfect entrance into what I was reflecting on, and the practice of Tonglen. Like many other cities in in our country right now, there is a huge population of homeless just spilling onto the streets of Phoenix every day. People of every age and description. And in making offerings every day, the first offering is, I open my life to all sentient beings and welcome them. And so I've had a practice for a long time of driving around the city with bags of food in my trunk and things that people might be able to use, and stopping, when I can safely, and offering that to whoever I see that might need it. But the thing that I've been noticing over the last few weeks is the contrast between the aspiration, may I open my life to all sentient beings, and the simple fact that when I offer that food and have a 1-minute conversation with the person, that I'm not really open to what their experience is. Like, I can't fully know them. And it's disturbing because we're not different. And so I'm just observing like what comes up here that doesn't allow me to really want to know what that suffering is. And so it's just exactly what Jeff is talking about, like how, like where the rubber meets the road.
Yes, and I think we have a feeling I should be able to, and we are in dualism where there is an I over here and a you over there, and we don't really understand that that leap is more difficult than we imagine because it's instinctual in our dualistic perception. And so this particular meditation is so profound because it helps you see all of those different kinds of threads, and that you can relax in each moment of seeing. And in training our minds over and over again with this meditation, we actually start to think differently. So then, as Jeff was saying, well, then our idea of a lovely day actually starts to become a we event. Actually, that makes me think of something I wanted to convey, and I will in another class. So for instance, Jeff, one of the ways that a lot of the monks and nuns are trained, and the great Rinpoches teach, is subtly changing your mind with all the activities you normally do. So I'm thinking of, may I get on my bicycle and ride up this hill? May I get on my bicycle and ride up the hill of liberation, bringing all sentient beings with me? They just change, may I open the front door? May I open the door of liberation to all sentient beings? They take every single normal activity in everyday life and start training their mind to think of that as a liberation activity for all sentient beings. And all of these different trainings then lead to, and then may I have food in my car for everyone, and may I be open in the moment of giving the food. It's all the imminence of that Buddha nature becoming fully manifest as it's nurtured and growing, seeing different layers and different stages as we continue to work with moving from I to we. Just being able to notice our border more clearly each and every day, and starting with the simplest things so that our mind changes, and as our mind changes, our activities change, and our presence in the midst of those activity changes. Other thoughts or things you're noticing? Yeah, Donna.
I'm also thinking about how, like, the teachers and people in my life that I know who are very like generous with their hearts, they're not doing things for me necessarily like concrete things, but just their presence
Mhm.
is what is the doing. So for me, like, that's been very impactful, just observing people like that. And even though there's lots of concrete things in my life they may or could have helped with, they didn't need to, because of just how they touched my heart and how generous their spirit was.
And I'm sure you're also touching people with your life and your generosity of spirit. So yes, there is a touching of each other as it moves along. And as each of us manifest their Buddha nature, the activities are a natural outflow. And we start to see that some of the beings are simply just resting in the outflow. Just, like if you're with Gyaltshen Rinpoche, his natural outflow is spinning his prayer wheel. His natural outflow is just, he has like a little fire going near him, little smoke offering going continuously, and he doesn't have to think about it as an activity. He's beaming, and his every movement of his body is doing some purposeful, yet not like intellectually directed flow of benefit. Oh, I see we're getting towards 11 o'clock, time to do the dedication prayers. Really, I'm so happy we've been able to take all of these weeks with Tonglen. I think it's been like 7 or 8 weeks. And because it's such a dear practice, and I'm hoping that you're all falling in love with it as much as I am as a lifetime teaching. So remember, next week is the special Zoom, and I'm going to put in the chat one more time. Okay, and Annie, if you'd start the dedication.
Dedication. By this virtue may I achieve omniscience, and may all who travel on the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. His Holiness Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama. For this realm, encircled by snow-covered mountains, you are the source of every benefit and bliss without exception. Tenzin Gyatso, you who are one with Avalokiteshvara, may you remain steadfast until samsara's end. His Holiness Drikung Kabyang Chetsang Rinpoche, embodiment of the 3 precious jewels, Padmapani, who holds the teachings of the Victorious One, seeing the all-goodness meaning with the wisdom eye, may you who are spontaneously established activities live long for hundreds of kalpas. His Holiness Drikung Kabyang Chungsang Rinpoche, noble Manjushri, the Lord of Speech, who manifests to hold the teachings of the Triple Gem, who raises the lamp of the sage's teachings, may you who are the light of the Dharma live long for hundreds of kalpas. His Eminence Gyaltshen Rinpoche, the one known in the Holy Land as Aryadeva, emanated into the Gar clan of Eastern Tibet as Chidingpa, the heart son of Jigten Sumgon. May the life of glorious Gyaltshen remain steadfast for 100 eons.
You're muted, Khenmo.
thank you everyone for practicing again. And I'm so happy that we're exploring Tonglen and really going deeply into it. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Khenmo. And
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Peggy,
you.
how did the tree
Thanks,
planting go?
Khenmo.
excellent. Yes, we got it all done. It wasn't hard. It was fun.
Great.
Thanks, Khenmo. Thanks, Annie.
Thanks, everyone.